What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another week of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Thanks again for taking some time out of your day to have a listen to our podcast that we've got going on here. Before I get started, I just wanted to take some time to ask you all a massive favor. Make sure that you're following us on the socials. So the Unstoppable Dad Project on Instagram, the Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook, and we also have a video version of the podcast on YouTube. So to be honest, I've been a little bit slack with the socials of late. The focus has been on obviously just doing the podcast and getting the podcast out each week. So even though I might not put it up on the socials, if you are subscribed on whatever podcast channel you are listening to this on, you will be notified when I publish a new episode. So this week, I heard a saying over the course of the week that I thought was really interesting. It's just an interesting way of putting things and things that sometimes we need to do to get past certain obstacles in our life. And the saying was, you can't read the instructions inside the box. And when I heard that, my mind automatically went to, some of the things that I've been going through and people that I've been, and it's so relevant to when we feel like we get stuck in a rut. So we feel like everything is going wrong and we feel like the walls are caving in and we just kind of feel like there's no way to turn. And I've been in a little bit of that headspace over the last few months with what's going on, predominantly from a business point of view, because things are a little hard at the moment. But it also touched on, I guess, a lot of the other themes that I go through on this podcast, like quite regularly, around if you're having trouble, ask for help. If you are, sometimes you just need to take a step back and try and analyze what's going on. And it all comes back to, and it's a saying that I'm sure I'm going to use a little bit since hearing it, but you can't read the instructions inside the box. And when you're inside of it, it's very, very hard sometimes to get outside of it so you can look at those instructions and understand what steps you have to take in order to get yourself moving forward again, or in order to get past that point. So like, if you do need to get outside, like, how do you get outside of the box? Like, I think the first port of call, like when I thought about it, because when I heard this saying, like my first thing was, righto, I like that saying, I'm going to use it as a topic for the podcast. But then I started thinking about, so how do we get outside of the box? Like, is there a step-by-step thing you can do to actually get yourself outside of the box? I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all type deal, right? Because everybody's so vastly different. Like the things that people want to do in order to, for lack of a better term, center themselves and be able to kind of assess things that are going on are going to be so vastly different. So I guess the first thing that my mind went to is obviously something that we speak about a whole bunch on here. And like, it's talking and asking for help. Like that's kind of probably the very first thing to help you get outside of the box. And it's not that the asking for help is actually going to get you out of the box to read the instructions, but having that outside perspective of somebody who is actually outside of the box can sometimes help you get to a point where you can step outside and you can start to read the instruction. You can start to know what's going on. And I think that that's probably like the first thing that came to my mind when I started thinking about what's the best ways in the past that I have done. So whether that is talking to a friend, talking to a professional, like if it, depending on how bad it is, talking to your wife, like, just a significant other, whatever the case might be, like having that outside perspective where maybe we aren't able to get outside of the box to read the instructions, we can talk to somebody who is outside of that box already, who can potentially give us some advice. And obviously, if we're in that headspace where it feels like we are inside and we're kind of trapped inside, we've also got to be willing to take on that advice that we're given. Because I think that the default, and I'm speaking on this from experience, sometimes when we get advice from people when we are in a tough time, it's hard to listen to that and take that on, because we kind of feel like they don't understand, and we get in this defensive mode around advice, thinking that it's criticism. So I think if we're going to take that step, you need to make sure that you are in a space where you're willing to take on that advice and not take it on as criticism. And so to that point, I think it's super important that if you are taking that as the first step to kind of get outside that box and try and address what needs to be addressed, you have to be open and you have to be willing to that advice or that feedback that you may be given, and thinking of it from the point of view of this person's not trying, like they're not against me. So going to somebody who you know and you trust is obviously a big thing. Sometimes going to a stranger is something that may not be the best first course of action, because maybe we're not quite in that headspace to take on what we're being told. But that's kind of the first thing. Like, you can't read the instructions inside the box. So maybe talking to somebody who's already outside of the box is a good thing to do to kind of get that started. And sometimes when something's wrong, it's hard for us personally to look at these things objectively, even if we are able to get outside of the box. Like, there may be instructions on either side of the box, like on both sides. So, and we're reading the wrong pair of instructions or we might be even out. We might not actually be outside of the box that we are in, but we're looking at the instructions on a different box because we're not being objective about what's going on. So sometimes having that outside perspective on a lot of things that are happening is such an important thing, because when we're in our own shit, it's sometimes very hard to get out of it. I know personally all too well, whether it be for myself or the people that I've worked with, like, it is hard to get out of your own head. So, and that's one of the things with this saying that I keep coming back to. If you're inside it and you really can't get out of it, getting somebody to help you interpret what's going on and taking their feedback and taking their help and seeing it as help, not seeing it as criticism or an attack, or not getting our back up about the advice that they're giving you, thinking that, well, this person doesn't fucking understand what I'm going through. And in fairness, like, how could they? No one's ever going to truly understand what you're going through. They just won't. It's not, they're not you. They don't have your experiences. They don't have your upbringing. They're not the person in the circumstances. However, they will have a different way of looking at things, and sometimes not being in it will actually give a clearer perspective on what's going on. And I guess other than that outside perspective, I'm sure there are other things that you can do within yourself to try and help you get outside of the box, to think about things more objectively. Like, there's a lot of different mindfulness techniques you can use, whether there's like meditating, journaling, or even just writing. Like, one thing that I've tried to do in times of high stress, and it's probably something that I should do more, is actually like just sit down and write my thoughts out on paper, and seeing that process going through and writing it down. And as I'm going through the process of writing it down, sometimes seeing either how trivial some things that I'm getting upset about are, or also being able to process it from an outside perspective, because it's getting out of my head onto the paper, is something that really helps me. Meditating is not, I'll be honest, meditation is not something that I've really ever been able to get around. And there's plenty of people who do it that would say that. For me, I'm probably the type of person, because I struggle to do it, that I need to do it more. I have given it a go over a good period of time, but it's just been something that I haven't really taken to. I've been like journaling and writing and that type of thing, even though my written English isn't the best. That's something that I've kind of lent to because I'm doing something. And I know the point of meditation is to actually like quieten the mind and be still. But by writing, and also too, like when I'm going through that process of writing or journaling, trying to get into a spot where I'm not usually like doing work. So like if I am writing, what I'll do, like if I'm at work, if you're watching this, this is kind of my office in the gym that we own. I won't do it at the desk. I'll actually like just pull a chair out, go out the back where there's like, sit on the grass where, I'm in the sun, something like that, and do that there and that is helpful. Like it doesn't solve the problem, but it creates some clarity around some of the steps that I potentially need to take to get out of it, because getting those thoughts out of my head onto paper it's been a helpful thing. And then I think the other thing is too, like learning how to switch off. And this is something that if you talk to my wife, this is something that she will tell you I am the absolute worst at. And this doesn't mean neglecting the problem, but sometimes we just need to disengage from things for a little bit before we go and tackle things head on, especially if it's something that's been lingering for a very long time, or there's potentially a lot of elements within the problem that is happening that are outside of your control. And and that could be, there's so many things you can do. Like it can be physical activity, like something like jujitsu. It can even just be like training. It could be as simple as going for a walk by yourself. For some people, it might be something like video games and stuff like that. But that's, your mind's still racing when you do that. It allows you to disengage. But doing that to kind of disengage and then coupling that with something where you can actually go through the process of, and not at the same time at different times, but coupling that with something like like journaling or writing or meditation, where you kind of disengage from it for a little while and then you move on to doing something where you can process it. These are all different ways where you can get outside of the box. But I think that at the end of the day, if you feel like you're inside of a box and you're inside of like a major issue or a problem at the moment, one of the worst things you can do for yourself and for your mindset is to stay in that place. Because, and this was the thing that like, as soon as I heard this saying, it was just like something inside me clicked, and I got like started thinking, I got going down the rabbit hole, which is what this particular podcast is about. The last 12 and a half minutes that I've just done basically giving you my thoughts on the different types of ways that you can get yourself out of the box, because I've covered this off, hasn't been as articulate as that particular saying, but you do need to get out of the box to read the instructions, because if you don't, and you stay in there, like that box is going to feel like it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and there is no room to breathe. And at some point you need to be able to get out in order to create freedom for yourself and create like mental clarity and to just be a happier person, because it's hard when you're inside of it, like when you're in the struggle and it feels like there's no way out. And for the most part, there is a way out, and sometimes it might not be a way out that we're happy with. And that's why maybe step one for a lot of us is just talking to somebody that we trust, getting an outside perspective, because they're outside the box. They can probably see a little bit more objectively what's going on. And maybe if you're not at that point, doing some stuff for yourself to process those emotions, whether it be some mindfulness techniques or it be, and there's plenty of free training. There's plenty of free information out on the internet. If that's something like some free resources that, from a meditation point of view, you could go and download the Headspace app if that's something you want to give a go. Like journaling, there's plenty of videos that you can have a look for journaling. It might just be if you find that you're forever in a negative headspace, it might be just a simple gratitude journal where you're writing down 3 things that you're grateful for each morning or each afternoon, or just when you get a chance. Like one of the things that I found, especially as a dad, when it came to trying to implement these habits, and I'm digressing for a little bit, was that I put a lot of pressure on myself to try and do it at the start of the day. And it created a level of anxiety around getting these things done. And I felt shit about myself if I didn't do it first thing in the day. And sometimes my life didn't lend itself to me being able to do that. So I kind of repositioned that to, I just would do it when I got a chance. And that was helpful. That made me enjoy the process a little bit more. So if you are trying to implement some of those things, sometimes, yes, you're going to see all these gurus talking about making sure you do it in the morning. And I understand the reasoning for that, because it kind of sets your day up. And if you're able to do that, awesome. But that's not going to be it's not going to be the way you're going to be able to approach it every single day. So sometimes it might just be doing it when you can. But in order to get out, in order to know what's going on and understand how to free ourselves from this box, we've got to get outside of it to read the instructions. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And as always, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out. If you need to talk to somebody, plenty of professional resources. If you want to explore some of those mindfulness techniques, I mentioned a few on there, and I'm sure there's plenty of others you'll be able to find on the internet. They're just two that I've experimented with or that have worked for me over the years. But to finish off, just remember, you can't read the instructions inside of the box. So sometimes you need to get yourself outside of the box to get some clarity and get some direction, and hopefully feel a little bit better about what is going on. So take care of yourself. Thanks for listening again, and I'll see you soon. Bye.